All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should be used at the listener's discretion.
Here comes the intro. Skip forward 30 seconds if you want to get right to the episode. This is the Tailboard Talk Podcast, the best health, wellness, and lifestyle resource for the fire service. We're using stories, lessons, and tips from the front lines to give a realistic view of what the job can do to us and how we can make it out alive. I'm Chris Morella, a firefighter since 03, medic since 05, full-time since 08, and promoted to lieutenant in 20. I'm also a personal trainer and strength coach, and I'm here to give you the best information and host the best discussions to make us capable and durable, both on the job and away from it. So grab a heater, steal some fancy creamer from first shift, and let's go chat.
All of life?
And all of life. Any questions about the universe I can answer for you?
I don't think so. What do you know about... figured out down at... probably shouldn't have said that. Edit that out.
All right.
Figured out how someone at 48 can still stay the way they do.
Oh, let me guess. Artificial genetics.
Good guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Little casual, is it Train?
Trenna. Yeah.
Trenbolone or whatever?
Yeah.
Trenbolone? Yeah. That came up in conversation today. I'm like, ding, ding, ding.
You know, it's one of those things where, like, I feel like TRT would do just enough.
Yeah.
For me. For a majority of the population. Like, at what point do you need to go beyond TRT? Because I think we've known people, we know people on the job that have TRT replacement.
Right.
And for some people, it makes them seem like they stay at their baseline. For other people, it seems like it just brings them back and reverses the clock a little bit.
Yeah.
And they look great. But that'd be enough, you know?
My guess is from the very minimal research I did on it, it's good for bulking and it's good for burning. So I think if you're somebody who wants to be aggressive about it, it's a efficient substance to use.
Trend is? Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously not a endorsement of it, but for guy number one who wants to be the unicorn. But
right.
Yeah, I couldn't, I guess looking at whatever I was looking at, there's no estrogen in it. So apparently it doesn't come with like the water loading and whatever the additional fat or addition side effects that the other anabolics come with, which I guess is what people are looking for, you know?
Yeah. Well, talk about speaking out of school. All I know is that if you have excess testosterone, it gets converted back to estrogen, and that's when you get like the gynecomastia stuff and a host of other problems you have to take. It's not like you can just get away with one. You can't just take one and be done. You got to take like the blend of different ones to make what you want, and then I don't know. I've never really seen the benefit in exploring it. I'm excited for the day when I feel like I need TRT replacement. Yeah. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not afraid to admit that. Yeah, dude. Part of me was like, all right, let's speed this up and let's get to that where I can start dosing a little bit. But until then, it's going to be hard to justify, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's what I know about it.
That's all I know about it too. I didn't even get into what all the dark side effects of it were, but
there's a guy on YouTube. There's several people on YouTube that talk about it, but he'll profile like one story per episode sometimes of like my fateful day with steroids. Yeah. And basically these people write in like novels of how they went from like casual gym rat to then like trying it out to, selling their house, and going broke and destitute and being in jail all in the name of aesthetics. And then, all the other things it leads to. So it's interesting, but I don't know. There's also a guy that goes around to gyms now, and it used to be a lot more of a controversial thing. But he would go to like the biggest people and be like, so are you natty or not? Yeah. And before it was like very funny because there's these just gorillas out there that are like, what are you talking about? You know? And these females that look like male gorillas out there, and they're like, I'm all natural, of course. And their voice is super deep, and they're like, you know, and, but now everybody kind of knows the guy in the bodybuilding circuit world.
Sure.
Or the gym world even. And so now they're like super honest with him. He's like, this isn't even fun anymore. Like people are just admitting that you're on gear all the time.
Turned it on me.
Yeah. So, but there's still a lot of like, so now he makes his big name on going to like the Arnold and other expos and talking to like the spokespeople or the influencers who insist that they're natural and insist that like, no, it's just this, you know, blah, blah, blah supplement that pays me. That's what I'm taking.
Mm-hmm.
And so he watches them squirm at like the public forums when there's questions to be asked.
Right.
Walks up in front of 100 people, just ambushes them. Kind of a dick move, but you know, they're not fooling anyone.
Right.
So
I'm just so blind to it too. It's like I don't even know where I go to be like, hey, where can I get some of that stuff? You know, it's like I guess you walk into GNC and wait till everyone leaves and it's like, hey,
it's probably a lot less like clandestine than you're thinking.
Probably.
Too, you know,
yeah.
It's probably like, oh, Jim's got it.
Yeah.
Go talk to
right.
Like they ring the bell, like Pedro Red, like he's looking for some steroids.
Yeah.
Like, over the Walmart loudspeaker.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's a good way to jump into to this. So I asked on Instagram for podcast topics, and a bunch of good ones came through. Postpartum stuff, 24:48 versus 48:96. Kelly Days, other fun schedule stuff, how to stay disciplined, which I told you that might be a fringe one, if we want to get into it or not. But then there's two of them that I thought we could talk about. The first one is how to stay big and broad while still improving cardiovascular strength and mobility. So that's a training question. This person, I don't know how big and broad they want to stay necessarily, or what they're starting out at, but what do you picture in your mind then when someone says like staying big and broad? What kind of body type are you picturing?
I mean, to me, I'm picturing like an NFL linebacker. You know, it's like
it's so not necessarily like cut, but just a mass of a person.
Yeah, that's I mean, when I read this question, that's what I'm kind of picturing in my head is how do I stay a big dude, but how do I also improve my capacity?
Yeah. I'm thinking that what comes to mind first is like amateur strongman to me.
Okay.
Like not defined at all. Probably packing on like 40 pounds of fat, you know, but just that like Michelin man carrying suitcases all the time, air lat syndrome, kind of big guy.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm picturing.
Okay.
I'm not picturing an athlete necessarily. I'm picturing just a wide frame dude.
I'll get in the frame, a wide frame dude then.
Well, but I want to hear, I think it's two different conversations because one of them you can't.
Right.
Right. So the guy I'm picturing in my mind, you can't.
Right.
Necessarily. Like there's just far too much mass there, first of all, to have your cardio and your endurance level at, I would say, a high level. There's too much mass there to offset. Like there's too many things that need too much energy for you to run a marathon.
Correct.
Effectively. With your side of it, of like an athlete side, you can get pretty close to it, but it's going to be...
It's also hard, though. You got to look at your parents first and blame them if you're not there already.
Yeah.
If the frame's not there, it doesn't matter how much work you put in. You know?
Yeah.
But I think, and we've talked about it before on this, but, you know, for me in training, when you use the weight room as a tool to be better at something versus just trying to be better at exercise, I think that the force time curve kind of is the ruler of everything. And so the force time curve is, you know, the y-axis is how much force you can produce, and the x-axis is how much time has gone by. And so the idea is if you can exude a certain amount of force, a lot of force, you can do that real quick, you know, less than 5 seconds or something like that. So 1 rep max back squat versus on the long end of the x-axis is running a marathon. Right. You know, you can do that for a long period of time. And as that kind of curves down from the x-axis down to the y-axis, there's a curve that happens. And the goal is to try and move that curve away from the intersection of the axes. And so that way you are producing more force for a longer period of time. but understanding that there's always an inverse relationship between absolute strength and absolute endurance. The more endurance you want, the less strength you'll have, and vice versa. And so it's coming up with training protocols to be able to move that whole curve is kind of the gold standard of training versus exercising.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much nails it. What I was thinking of was a couple things. Because that opens up another conversation, too, of like, well, then what does that look like training-wise, right? Because there's the CrossFit methodology, but that's also, I would argue, that's pretty close to the y-axis on that plot, because I haven't looked at CrossFit workouts in a while, but I know you'd be hard-pressed to find a Metcon that goes longer than 10, 12 minutes maybe.
Right.
Does that sound right? So even that is on the short end of that axis,
Right.
And even that is using standardized but moderate weights, for lack of a better word. I think the difference is, and the way that you and I both programmed off and on, is the difference between an AMRAP or an AFAP to just a running clock of 20 minutes, right? So you can even take a CrossFit workout that's an AMRAP and extend it out to 20 or 25 or 30 minutes using the same weights, and it's going to give you a completely different look and elicit a totally different response than if you just blasted through at a heart rate of 190 for 7 minutes.
Right.
You can now be in like the 140, 50, 60s for 20, 25 minutes, which is going to probably benefit you more on the fire ground and in general life.
Yeah.
By removing as many rounds as possible or as fast as possible and changing it to just a running clock, and you monitor your rest periods basically by continually asking yourself, like, okay, can I start again now? Like, am I recovered enough to start again now? In the first couple rounds, it'll be like 15, 20, 30 seconds. You're like, okay, I can go again at a pretty good pace here. And then you just got to be smart enough that you're in this thing for 20 or 25 or 30 minutes. So at minute 18, you might need a minute and a half to rest before you can get through the next round without stopping and put some good effort out. But the hope is, if you're consistently doing that with weights that are appropriate, then 6 months to a year from now, at minute 18, you're at 45 seconds rest instead of 90 seconds rest.
Right.
So you've practiced progressive overload, and you've done a good job with that, and now you are getting stronger, instead of just going by perceived exertion all the time in a time period of 7 minutes that's so short that anything's going to blow you out in 7 minutes if you do it fast enough.
Right.
So that's the first thing I thought of, was you have to adjust your training methodology a little bit, and really embrace those longer running clock segments versus like the typical CrossFit, just beat your head in the dirt for 7 minutes thing. The other thing it made me think of is, like, if you're legitimately a big, broad guy and you believe that a lot of that's muscle, right? And you got that layer of 1.5 inches of fat on you that makes you look just not defined, but you're a big yoked dude. I think you can dedicate a significant amount of time to cardio and still maintain a lot of that muscle. It's going to take you a long time, years and years, to dwindle away to to look like the average marathoner or dad bod kind of thing. So, and best case scenario, you might lose that 2 inches of padding around you, and then you're in better shape altogether, right?
Yeah.
So can you stay big and broad while still improving cardiovascular strength and mobility?
Absolutely. Mobility that's just discipline for the other one. Cardio will be the harder thing to commit to long term. Mobility is, you just got to do it.
Yeah. I always described cardio versus strength as cardio in terms of building them and maintaining them, is that cardio is like blowing bubbles in your chocolate milk, where you build it up really fast, but also goes away really fast.
Yeah.
And strength would be like trying to increase the thickness of the wall by adding layers of paint. So like 1 layer of paint per day, and you're like, God, this is never going to happen.
Yeah.
And then 2 years from now, it's 1 inch thicker because you put on that much paint,
Yep.
So that's kind of how I tried to paint that visual in those. But yeah, cardio is fickle, man.
Yeah.
It's a fickle beast.
It
And
is.
at the end of the day, it's for a lot of people in their mentality, it's easier to move a 300-pound weight 6 times and do that than it is to go on the Airdyne or on the bike for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we're going to default to strength, but I think it's pretty well established now that firefighting in general I would put firefighting in general much closer to an endurance need than a raw muscular strength need.
Yeah, I think for me, I would rather have somebody who has a good foundation of strength leaning towards endurance than somebody who's super strong, but I get 2 minutes out of them and they're done.
Yeah. Well, it's even more, and we've seen in the consumption course, it's even more apparent now because we went from quarter service to third service on the low air alarms.
Mm-hmm.
So it moved it from, 2,200 to 3,100 or something like that, right? In incorrect numbers again, but what we saw was during the consumption course that we do, it moved people from, let's say, 14 to 17 minutes of working time, and then the bell hit, then they'd have another 6-7 minutes of bell time, to almost 50-50. It moved to like 12, 13 minutes, and then the bell goes, so they start paying attention. Now they're at like 8, 9, 10 minutes of bell time before they're sucking it to their face. So, if you only have 12 minutes of work, you don't want to shorten that to 7 minutes because of your capacity.
Right.
So, all right, not bad. Number 2, why... So I'll ask a question, then I'll kind of give the backstory. Why working out feels physically different on different days, like feeling weak. So this person reached out and said, hey, I did this workout Tuesday, and I felt great. My numbers were XX and X. And then I came back the following Tuesday, and I felt absolutely terrible, like almost quit, and just did like a slow bike ride for 30 minutes. Same workout, same gym, same day of the week. Why do I feel so terrible this week? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I could gather from a female that maybe we were reaching a cycle time.
Could be.
That if I were just looking at it individually there, for me, and if everything is same in the vacuum, I don't really have a great thing other than maybe it just wasn't her day, unless you had more insight than that.
No, I don't. It very well could be that. I mean, I think that's something that, it's something that can be easily brushed off, right? But then as you look in the different like phases of it and the professionals out there that talk about it, you're like, holy crap, there's some significant considerations that need to be taken into account over these couple of weeks. No, there's no other insight. It's just that. It's like, why do I feel so terrible today?
Strictly female based, that's what I'd guess, I mean, globally there's other things, if it's all in a vacuum and nothing else changed and she's not a shift worker or anything like that, without knowing any other information, that's the stab I would take.
Okay.
If she is a shift worker or she's got kids or something else, like maybe there's variables in there that are different that we just don't know about. Yeah. But that would be my thing, is that there's, sleep was different the night before. There's more stress, in whatever the morning routine was leading up to. Breakfast was different. I don't know. I don't have a great answer without knowing anything more than that. I would say outside of a vacuum, we've talked about before, like there's kind of 4 pillars of wellness. There's training and working out is one of them. Sleep is one of them. Nutrition is one of them. And then mental health and stress management is the last one. And kind of the analogy we use for it is like a stool or a car. You could say, like, if you're driving your car and you don't have the right amount of tire pressure in there, the car will still run. It just won't run as well. And same thing if you're sitting on like a 4-legged stool and you shave one of the legs down a couple inches, you can still sit on that stool. It's just not the way it's meant to be. And so if something in there, sleep is off or nutrition's off, that can throw a significant curve into your training plan as well.
So I guess the saving grace of it, one thing that we can say for sure is that over the course of a week, it's going to be those external factors causing your decrease in strength and capacity. You didn't lose 20% of your muscle.
No.
You didn't lose 20% of your cardio. You didn't it's a temporary thing.
Correct.
It's something that's acutely affecting you. And chances are when you come back next week, you'll be back to baseline or better, because maybe you've paid attention. You felt terrible this time, so you're going to rest a little bit extra or make sure you're actually eating or drinking enough water or sleeping. And then next week you're like, oh, that was just a fluke week. And that's what it really is. It's a fluke week.
Could be flip side on the other side. Maybe the week before was a really good week.
Yeah.
That you overperformed what you were expecting. And so then you underperformed by 10%, and it seems like a huge,
Right. Yeah. I can remember times too when we were training heavy of just like you said, like just sometimes you just don't got it, or you have in your mind of like, okay, we're doing back squats today. And the whole time you're like, man, I wish we were doing deadlifts. Like, I just feel like today's a good deadlift day.
Yeah.
But you're not. You're doing back squats. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have a mediocre back squat day.
Yeah.
And then by the time deadlift day comes around, you're like, man, I wish we were doing back squats.
Right.
Like, yeah. So it's just it might just be purely a mentality thing.
Oh, and there's certainly days too. I mean, I even had one recently where it was like, we were doing deadlifts in 6s or something like that. And I'm like, man, I feel really good. I wish I was pulling singles today or something, just to see, Yeah. So yeah, I've had it on the flip side too of like, maybe I'll deviate from the plan today and just see how much weight I can put on here.
Go ego lifting a little bit.
Exactly.
It's never not worked before. Yeah. So long answer short, I don't know. We can't tell you necessarily, but take solace in the fact that it's a temporary thing. And if you pay attention, maybe it's a clear signal, right? Maybe it's your body telling you like something is on the horizon, that you are getting sick or you are worn out or you do need to start paying attention. Or maybe it is like a verification of like, I knew I didn't eat enough this morning and I knew I didn't sleep enough last night. And now I know how my performance lags when that happens. So that's good information either way. You can take that to now your work experience and say like, well, I know I didn't sleep last night at work, or I'm coming on shift. I didn't sleep because the kids were up or something like that. Maybe I should pay attention to that today because I know if we get a fire or something big happens, I don't have what I would expect to have.
Right.
I'm that easily impacted by this stuff. I need to pay attention. Because then you will be kind of called out on it. You'll have to do something, so you need to know exactly what you're capable of doing.
And I will say, I won't pull the exact number up here, but there's a significant decrease in performance output with every like 30 to 60 minutes of sleep you miss off of 8 hours. And so that's, I don't, like I said, I don't have the numbers right up, but if you're a 6.5 hour sleeper, and you get 6 or 5, like that's a big deal. Yeah. So that could be another consideration too, is you may think you slept almost it, but if you aren't an 8 hour sleeper and you still change yourself a half hour, that's a big deal. Yeah.
That's true, man. And then some days you feel like you're fine after 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. Just hasn't caught up to you yet. It's just not the afternoon
and
yet.
And you're catching flies at 7 p.m. on the couch.
Exactly.
Nathan's drawing on your face. Yep. You're like, I wasn't sleepy. Do you want to get into the discipline one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So it just says how to stay disciplined. How you do it?
For me, a lack of discipline is more a lack of structure. I think most of the time when people feel undisciplined, it's because they don't have a plan with whatever they think they're being disciplined on. So if it's nutrition, if you don't have like a caloric intake goal, or you're not loosely tracking your meals or something like that, it's easy to be undisciplined because you're not working towards anything. You don't have any discipline in the first place.
Right.
If you don't maybe set training goals or have a schedule or a calendar that you follow, or make time for workouts or things like that, the emotional side of our brain will skip that hard stuff pretty easily. And I think we blame it on a lack of discipline at that point. But to me, it's more a lack of structure in the first place. You just didn't create an attainable plan for yourself, a reasonable plan. And without that structure, it feels like a lack of discipline.
Yeah. And we ran into that first one a few times with guys who would talk about their cheat meals, and then we would ask them, well, what plan are you following that you're earning 2 to 3 cheat meals a week?
Right.
And they're like, well, I'm trying to do this, or I'm half doing this. We're like, then every meal's a cheat meal. Yeah. Like, you're not cheating if you're not playing by the rules in the first place.
Right.
You're just eating like crap all the time and confusing it with an actual program.
Right.
So one of the things I said on the response bubble on this was like, if you need to look at it a different way, and I fleshed this out in 2 of the 3 levels, so I might fumble it a little bit, but I said you can compare it to something you're familiar with, which would be like a fireground activity, right? So from a command perspective with fireground stuff, there's the strategic and the tactical and the task level organization. So when you pull up to any call, you have a strategic objective. You're going to put the fire out, or you're going to help people at a car accident. Whatever the global and just overarching theme of that call is, that's what we're doing. And so in other terms, it could be even like an offensive, defensive thing with a house fire. Like that's your strategic objective is what the big idea is. And then you get the tactical side of it was like, well, okay, a little bit closer focus. We're coming down from 30,000 feet. Like, what are we doing? Are we going to try to go in the front door or the back door? What's the idea here that we're trying to work on? And then the task level is like, what hose are you picking? Where are your gloves? What are you on air? That like nitty gritty stuff. That's the smallest level of focus. Mm-hmm. And I view discipline is the same way. Like, first of all, you have to have a larger focus or a larger something you're going towards, a larger goal, a larger purpose for it. If you don't have that, like you're just kind of floundering, right? Because you're going to try and make progress in towards a direction you haven't set yet. Mm-hmm. And after that, then you look at like, okay, if I know I'm going to try to lose weight, like that's my strategic objective is weight loss. What tactical thing can I do to help that? Is it a spin class? Is it, jiu-jitsu? Is it kickboxing? Is it Olympic lifting? Like what's going to be the best tool to do that, right? And then after that, you identify like, okay, what workouts specifically I'm going to do every single day? What's my workout schedule? What am I sticking to? What's the plan? What's the nutrition plan? You get down to the nuts and bolts of the thing. But without having that kind of in line, you're either going to say like, I want to lose weight. Okay, what are you going to do? I'm just going to do everything.
Right.
I'm going to hope for the best, or I'm just going to do what my friend does and he lost weight, so that's going to work for me. You have to clearly define all these things, and then that gives you a plan and hopefully a direction to go and the specifics to get it done. But yeah, that just ties back into your structure thing. Unless you've planned out that structure and what you want to do and why and specifically how, then it's easy to confuse a lack of discipline with, or the other way around, a lack of structure with a lack of discipline, mm-hmm. right? The other way too is sometimes you are just not disciplined, and and that's okay too.
But that's okay if you have structure and you have. We get into our 80-20 then, because if you have structure and 80% of the time your structure is solid, you can have 20%
right
lack of discipline, but you're still disciplined at the higher level of everything you just had. And that's kind of like you blow a bunch of bubbles. None of those bubbles matter to each other. So if you have one bubble that's bad, like a cheat meal, and you pop it, it doesn't impact all the other bubbles. You just
right.
pop that bubble, you know? And so if you have the structure set already, there can be some permissive lack of discipline in there because you have better discipline over the whole thing.
Yeah. I think there's also a constant pendulum swinging of extremes of like Jocko and Goggins and whatever hard charger is out there. Mm-hmm. Everything's discipline, everything's personal accountability.
Yeah,
like
David Wack.
Everything's, you deserve to suffer and every day is hard and you got to fight through everything and that side, right? Mm-hmm. Then there's the other side of like acceptance of like, you're just doing the best you can. And the David Weck thing got you?
I started thinking of the head thing that he was doing with the strap. And his glasses down over his nose.
Oh, God. And there's the other side of it of like, hey, we're all just doing our best. We all deserve days off. Like, you just do the best you can do for today. Mm-hmm. And we love you no matter what. That's the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
There's room for both those opinions in the world. Sometimes you just got to get your fucking act together and go do the work, even if you don't want to or don't feel like it, right?
Yeah.
So there's, I prefer to use those two things more like a sniper, the Jocko side and the... Let's just imagine Weck is on the other side.
I'm trying.
Let's imagine he's on the soft side,
all right,
the feeling side, okay? So you can disregard him easier.
Yeah.
Those are the things I'll use like as a sniper. Like, I'm going to apply this for today. Mm-hmm. Today I'm going to be a hard charge and go towards it. Or today I'm going to give myself a little bit extra leash. You're not going to make it through this thing, are you?
Losing it. All I got is David Weck going side to side now with his coin shakers.
This is such a weirdo. Lots of people love him.
God.
And he's going to make $1 million on whatever vest he's got. His boingy boing vest. To summarize, get more discipline and stop whining. Does that work?
That works.
Okay.
Get more structure.
Get more structure. Get more structure so you don't have to rely on motivation and quote unquote discipline to do it. Just get with the program and stick with it. It makes me want to talk about fear of feilure and fear of succeeding. fear of winning, whatever it is. I just don't know that much about it, but I feel like that's a big part of it too.
Yeah.
Like, God forbid you commit to this thing and it goes well. You know, there's a big fear about that too of
Sure.
that's hamstringing people before they even start. And that's a much less understood one by me, much less talked about one. Usually it's fear of failure, but I think the fear of succeeding is equally as effective at handicapping people in their journey. You know? Do you know much about that one?
Do I want to what?
Do you know much about that one?
No.
Yeah. Maybe I'll research.
I was just trying to think
it
a little bit more of like, you know, I guess an example, like coming down from like, if you're in a calorie deficit and you lose a certain amount of weight, but also looking at going like in the process, like, yeah, this is working, but this is how it's going to be forever, you know, and it's, if you don't enjoy that process,
yeah,
I can see that as being, you know, the fear of success side of it.
Do you think it's more that, or do you think it's more, I mean, in addition to that, do you think it's two things? Catholic guilt, like that's a huge thing of like, nothing good can possibly happen to me because something terrible is going to happen immediately following, right? Mm-hmm. And then someone else said the other day, like, I don't know if they were trying to get sympathy or just being funny. They're like, you know how hard it is to be like an in shape guy, like a fitness person? I'm like, I actually don't. Yeah. But they're saying like, if you're a fat guy, right, and you go to the beach, were you telling me this?
No, I don't think so.
If you're a fat guy and you go to the beach and you show up next year and you're still a fat guy, people say, oh, he's just a fat guy. Yeah. If you're an in-shape guy and you got a six-pack and you go to the beach and then next year you gain 20 pounds, they'll be like, man, what happened to him? He fell apart.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, there's so much pressure to maintain once you've started, you know, and so maybe that's, jokingly, maybe that's a part of it too of like, God, what if I do this thing, but I'm not going to be able to keep it up and then I'm going to rebound and then people are going to talk shit about me or like really see how much of a slob I am kind of thing. Yeah, I could see that happening for fitness, you know, like you really pour a year of really hard work into something and do make some good changes, then you're just terrified that it's going to come back. And then, I mean, it seems like a natural path for eating disorders to pop up or,
for sure.
or unhealthy mechanisms to maintain whatever progress you made, right?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
So, I don't know. Well, covered a lot of ground, 32 minutes. Got to take out about 7 seconds worth.
We do. My bad. My lack of discipline.
Yeah, all right. No, we'll keep that part in. We'll take out something in the first part.
I gotcha.
Well, cool, man. Got coffee from a new place today.
It's delicious. Thanks, Rosa. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Rosa. Kurt's client, my fan.
You sent me that thing today as I was, what was she just about to do? Something tough today. Shuttle runs, I think she had. And I'm like, oh.
Take the last round off.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She was asking, we can talk about it after. She was asking, maybe it partnered in, she was asking, you had an analogy with ladders of like, you throw a ladder a couple times, then you climb it with a tool, then you do something else. She asked what your thought of that was, and I loosely explained that it was probably because anytime we practice something, we try and go for the full thing, and this is kind of dissecting the full thing down to become competent in certain parts. So
yeah, I can't remember. So I remember the specific example was that we had those houses up on Tollgate or whatever, Tollgate, and I can't remember what point I was tying it back to, but essentially every time we practiced roof ventilation, we'd go to the simulator and you get on the roof and you cut the hole, right? But what we did was we did from the ground to the roof of a 2-story. We broke down of like, all right, as fast as efficiently as you can, get everything, and we're going to stop it when we're ready to climb the ladder. Mm-hmm. And in that, I was like, oh, I left the pike pole back at the engine. Or like, oh, I forgot my glove over here or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So we cleaned that up. And then the second one was like, all right, we're going to go, and our stopping point is at the top of the ladder right before we're going to get on the roof. Yeah. And then reset everything again. And then third and fourth time was the full thing to go through it, right? And I can't remember if I was tying it to like how we jumped to the end. Mm-hmm. I think it was actually a talk about training, like how to make your training work. Maybe that was the one. But we did try to jump to the finish line with everything, with so many things, right? But everything can fall apart if you don't know the details and the path to get to that, to that thing. And if anything goes wrong in that process and you haven't practiced the process a handful of times, at least be comfortable with it, then you're going to have to think on the fly. And that leaves way too much room for error at that point in like a critical situation. So I'll have to look back and see exactly what health and wellness or what point I was tying to that. But I also think it's just a good way to train. I think it's a good way to train of like...
Yeah, I'm not sure if it had health and wellness theme to it. I think it was just a training theme to it, and she was.
Yeah, it's a good way to get more reps, more quality reps, and cover stuff that we usually miss. You know, it's I think usually when we do hose attack or advancement or something like that, you have to start from pulling it. But even then, you know, there's certain drills we do where maybe you're not doing a 360, maybe you're not doing your over the air traffic, maybe you're not doing your size up necessarily is the way we'd actually do it.
Right.
And that just lends to missing those things when you actually need it. So
yeah.
Especially a complex evolution like cutting a hole. Like there's so much to do before you're actually up there cutting that, it's impossible to visualize and go through it.
Right.
Which I think visualization was another point of that episode of like you have to visualize and go through it. But yeah, that was probably it. Just a good way to train and get good reps in. To have every rep be valuable instead of just doing stuff to cut a 4x4 and get off the roof, you know, with half your stuff on and using a tool you probably won't use again.
Right.
So that was it.
All right.
All good?
All good.
If you guys like what Curt and I are talking about, you can go to fourthshiftfitness.com and there's a buy me a coffee donation button. That's what we were talking about with Rosa. She donated 20 coffees. That's a lot of coffees. So thanks for that again. You can donate some coffee. You can buy shirts and stickers and stuff. You can just send us a note and say, hey, good job, guys. You can find us on Instagram also under the Fourth Shift Fitness banner. And I'll link Curt's personal one up there so you can harass him personally. But that's it. We'll talk to you guys soon.